Hello everyone, welcome back to FX021. So yeah, last chapter we cover about the particle simulation and how to remap the attribute. So in this part I'm gonna covering the smoke simulation and how to render this out. Okay, so let's get started. So first thing first, last part we finish it here, add some attribute noise on the density and temperature here. So yes, and then temperature, and we have our burn attribute here. So now we're gonna turn this point to volume. So we use a volume rasterized attribute node here. In here we just select type density, temperature, velocity, burn. So 4 attribute here, and you can see something like this. Okay, so just make sure the voxel size is 0.02. So make sure, so this is the how detailed your volume is. Okay, and you can change the particle scale here, and you can turn on velocity blur, change the shadow to 1, and change the offset to -1. And you can play around the voxel size and the particle scale here. So basically the particle scale here and the particle scale here in the pyro source. You can link these two, but I'm just tweaking manually. So to make sure you kind of have a detailed look in the sub level. Okay, so yeah, so when you have these prepared, let's dive inside the DOP network. So the DOP network, you just create a DOP network here, and we use the sparse pyro solver. I think I already covered that in the Shang-Chi's tutorial. If you haven't checked that, just go check that out. Yeah, so let's go to first frame, put our view flag on the DOP network here, and dive inside. As you can see here, it's still like pretty basic. You can I can disable this too. So by default, if you want see your smoke simulation, you need to have a solver. So I'm using a sparse solver, which saves a lot of memory, saves a lot of calculation, and it's faster. So sparse solver, so you need a sparse object and you need a volume source. So that's the essential things for pyro simulation. So in the volume source, if you create it, and you can change the input to first context geometry, which is the volume rasterized attribute here in the first context. And by default, you can see it, the initialize set to source smoke, but you don't see anything here. So you just change to like anything here, maybe sync, and change it back to smoke. Now you can see the attribute is density, temperature, velocity, and you can add the burn attribute here as well. So let's see. So the burn attribute in the .NET is called flame. So you need to remap it to the flame, or you can just in the sub level just create. In here you can just change the f at burn to f at flame. Then you can just use flame and flame here. So you can so I'm using burn in the sub level, so I use burn, and target field in the DOP network is flame. Okay, and yeah, I think that's it. So you can change the density scale based on your simulation. You can change the density scales as well in the DOP network, or you can also change the density in the sub level, just maybe 50 here, so it's the same. Okay, and Yeah, the temperature is the same, velocity is the same, and the burn here, I think I changed the operation to copy. So I just want, so the add means the velocity and the density will keep adding on top of that. But the copy means the value will be in the sub level will be exactly copied to the dot network. Okay, and I set the scale to 2. So yeah, I think that's what I do. And I also check enlarge fields to contain sources. So for Pyro simulation, you always want to check this, because you can see this box here. If you don't have that checked on, and if your source is outside of this box, then the Pyro simulation might not recognize it because it's not in the field here. So you want to check enlarge fields to contain the sources. Okay, I think that's all I have for the volume source. You can copy the value here. So yeah. And in the Pyro sparse solver, let me see. So I changed the cooling rate here. So I think let's revert to default. Default is 0.5. I change it to 0.2. And I think I changed the reference temperature here. The reference temperature here by default, I think it's 3000. It's crazy high, I think. Yeah. It will, it's like a temperature which will make your smoke rise faster, but I don't want smoke rise faster, so change it to 350. And you can also play around with buoyancy scale. So -1 will make the smoke go downwards, the 1 will go upwards. Also you can change to 0.7 based on your preference. And yeah, and the flames here, because we have our burn attribute, so we want the front part, which let me play the simulation. Yeah, you can see. So I want the, so sorry, it's a little bit lagging. So yeah, so you can go to the flames tab here. You can make these flames emit smoke. You can turn on that and change the emission amount here. That's what I do. And if you have explosion simulation, you can also check the add expansion here. So, but I don't have, it's not an explosion, so I don't check the temperature and the expansion here. So I just turn on the emit smoke, and I turn on the dissipation here. And I haven't turned on disturbance and turbulence here because I just create a separate node here, these micro solvers, and plug into here. I think the disturbance here, you can have strength, block size, roughness here, just have more controls, more parameter than the one it provide here. You see, okay, I think it's pretty much the same, I think, but you can see this one has rotational forces. But if you go to the Pyro solver here, go to the disturbance tab, I don't see the rotational force here. So I just create a separate node here for disturbance and turbulence. So yeah, and plug into the forces here. Okay. And in the Pyro solver here, what else I changed? I think that's it. Oh yeah, and by default, I think you can't see the green fire here because the smoke object by default is set to visualize density here. Okay, the density is only the smoke, as I said last chapter. So only the burn attribute, which is we remap to the flame attribute here, will be the fire. So it's basically the front part here. So you need to set to multi-field here, and now you can see the green fire here. And in multi-field here, you can go to the tab here, and I think, yeah, you can the density field, you can type density here, and emission here, you can change the emission scale and make sure the emission field is flame and emission color field is flame, and it's just for visualization. Okay, you can if you turn on the, you can change the emission value here, and yeah, I think that's what I do. And you can also change the color here, so make sure the visualization here is multi-field, otherwise you will not see the green fire. And now you can, let me enable these two, and let's go to the first frame. So for disturbance, I just change the strength here, and I have some rotational forces, so it's not going to add force on our smoke, it's gonna like rotate our smoke. It's more like it's like, you know, it's kind of like these small areas. You can see it's having some rotational forces. It's subtle, but yeah. And in explosions, you can also have these rotational force turned on. Okay. And I just changed the mode to block based, which have more parameter to control, but I don't change anything here. It's all default. And yeah, and also I add some turbulence here, just change the scale, swirl size, and seed here, and turbulence amount, and all the other things are default. So it's a pretty basic dot network setup here, I think. Yeah, I think that's all the thing I changed. Yeah, that's all the thing I changed. And so now let's go cache this out. So let's go back to the sub level. For this one, you can use a dot import field. The field is the one we talked about. It's the field is the one, actually, the density, temperature, velocity, and the burn. And the burn are remapped to the flame. So these attributes we want to take out from the dot network. So it's density, velocity, temperature, and flame. And oh yeah, and as well, the velocity at the sub level is called V, but in the dot network it's called VEL, VEL. So in the volume source here, by default, you see the source volume is V, and we remap to the VEL. Okay, that's the thing you're gonna note. You need to pay attention. So I think for the dot import field, you can just not dot import. You can use the preset. Let me see. The preset is smoke. That has everything. You don't need color, you don't need rest. You need the, I think I add the flame here and set it to invisible. Okay, so now you will have the field here. And I think I already covered this in the Shang-Chi's tutorial. Basically this compress your volumes. So you convert that to a VDB and compress the volume to a 16-bit float. So basically turn on everything in the Pyro post process, and your file cache size will be reduced significantly. Okay, and then you just use a file cache node, and make sure you turn on load from disk after you finish the cache. So let's view it. So this is our cache. So one thing I noticed that is the problem here is you can see this pattern here, which is not very good. I don't have time to fix this, but if you want to fix this, you can increase the sub steps in the Pyro in the top network, so it will not have these kind of, because it's moved too fast, so it will have these stepping issues. But you can increase sub steps to fix it. And also I think you can go to the Pyro solver here, and I think, yeah, you have minimum sub step and maximum sub steps. You can change it here as well. So other than that, it's all good, but you don't see the green fire. Okay, you see it in the top network because we set to multi-field and we set the flame attribute. But here are just the volume. So let's disable this first. So you can use a volume visualization node. It's just for you to visualize in the viewport. Okay, it doesn't do anything. So you can put after the out node, and you can export the out node, but you can visualize here. Okay, don't output the visualization node. I think it will have some errors. So just export this one and visualize on this one. So now you can see, we can see the green smoke, green fire, and it's the same. You can see we have density field set to density and the emission set to flame. Okay, and it's the color ramp here, and you can change the shadow scale, density scale here. And this node is not necessary. Okay, just play around with the noise here. You can do that by a volume VOP, add some noise to the density, or you can just use this volume noise fog here. Okay, so the fog volume name is the density. You can play around with the operation to test which one is best, and you can play around with the element size, animate noise. It's just, let's turn on that. You can see some difference, but it's not, you can see there are some difference here. Turn off, turn on. Yeah, so I just add some noise to the volume. So yeah, that's our smoke. So now let's go to render this out. So for rendering, usually I will create a separate node for rendering. So because this one here has lots of operations, lots of node. So I just copy the out node and create an empty geo folder here and use object merge to bring that in. Make sure you bring the out node so it's only have the white smoke, not the one we visualize with green and black smoke. Okay, and yeah, and this is the particle, green particles here. Okay, we have that, and make sure that in the render tab here, in the sampling tab, turn on velocity blur on both of them so that we will have motion blur when we render this out. Okay, so let's if you are using Houdini 18.5 and any version before, you can use mantra node to render. If you are using Houdini 19, you can try the Camera node. Okay, or you can use any render engine you want. So if you are using mantra, you can go to the out here, just type mantra here, and you can create your camera in sub level and change the rendering to PBR, and make sure you turn on allow motion blur here, and you can play around with the sampling here, and in objects, make sure you just render the one we have the render name on it. So it's the render particle and the render smoke means. And yeah, I think that's it. Just set to render frame range. Then also you need to assign materials. So for particles, you can go to the matte tab here, or you can just go to material palette. If you don't have this one, just click the plus icon here. There is one called the material palette. Yeah, here. So material palette. And you can, for smoke, you can use any of them here. Like a sparse fireball, I think it's good. Just make sure you just assign the density and the flame attribute in the shader, okay? And you play around with the value. And for the particles, you can use glow materials here. And after you down the material, just go to the geometry node here. Okay, I think it's a bug in Houdini where you select the node, but the parameter window doesn't change. Just close that one, open a new parameter window. Yeah. So once your material is done, just go to the render tab. Under the material, you will find your material and just select that and select for both ones. Assign the both material for each one, and then render this out. Okay. So for Houdini 19, you can use camera. So it's a little bit different because you can go to stage. So stage, it's kind of a USD environment, which so you will bring all the asset to this thing here and render this out. So first thing first, create a lob network here, okay? And inside the lob network, you can create create a node called scene import. And scene import here, you can bring the object. So slash object. We are the render smoke mean, and another one is the render particles. Okay, so this is the smoke, this is the particle. Okay, that's what I do here. So the smoke mean and particle, and rename these ones. Okay, and you can create a material library here for each one. And in the smoke one here, I create a pyro advanced shader. And the density is set to 3.5, and you can copy the value here. This one you just need to tweak the value. So just click the perspective here, change to camera here, and make sure the view flag is on the smoke material tab. Yeah, and you can put your view flag on the dome light because it will have lighting information here. And so in the pyro shader, just tweak, play around with the density scale, smoke color, shadow density, and make sure the most important thing is the enable fire. Okay, and it will have the greenish fire bring in here, and make sure the bindings here, the fire is set to flame here. Okay, so we want set to the flame because we have the attribute called flame. Let's see, the default is temperature, but I just set it to flame. Okay, yeah, and for the particles here, also I just create a principal shader here, and I think I just increase the emission intensity. I don't set the color because I already set color in the sub level, so all the color are bring into the bring to the camera engine here. So yeah, so that's simple. And make sure you just check assign to geometry here, and just type RNDR particles, and for this one as well, assign to geometry, render smoke me. Okay, and then merge them together and create a environment light, and you got this. And make sure you can go to HDRI Heaven to grab a texture. I'm using the default one that Houdini provide, so it's I think it's the second one. Yeah, it's the second one here. That's what I use. And just create a camera. You can go to the angle you like and alt click on the camera, so the camera will align to the view, and go to the icon here. Make sure you select your camera and go to the icon here, camera 1. Okay, then you can set your render properties here. So you can use the camera render properties node, set the resolution here using CPU engine, and I think image output, enable depth of field. I don't think I use it, but you can turn on motion blur in the camera effects. And I think that's it. If you have a lot of noise when you render, you can turn on the denoiser, NVIDIA optics denoiser, and you can also increase the sampling and the limits here. And in the camera node, you can also override the effect you have. And yeah, just make sure it's set to the camera 1, which is this one, and render frame range and the render, and you will get the final result. Yeah, I think that's it for today. And if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel. I will be having a new tutorial about the grains and sand coming soon, so stay tuned.